Hey guys, thanks for joining me for this 54th episode in Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guests for this episode include Penn and Kim Holderness. Got a brand new book, Everybody Fights, Why Not Get Better at It? We'll also visit with actress and voice actress Paget Brewster. She's got a new animated series, Birdgirl, that premieres on Adult Swim this Sunday night. We'll also visit with best-selling author Elle Marr. She's got a new book, Lies We Bury, that's available now. We'll also visit with Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward, talk about his podcast and the March Madness. Check out his podcast on the BLEAV Network, BLEAV in the ACC. We'll also visit with music marketing mastermind Jason Peterson, and our final guest adds a debut album, Call It Even, that will be coming available on April 23rd, Scott Sean White. Of course, if you would, please take the time to subscribe, drop a like, comment, leave some feedback, and share with your friends. You may have seen them, may have heard of them a little bit. Viral sensations, Kim and Penn Holderness on with us. Got a new debut book to talk about. And first off, Kim and Penn, thank you so much. I'll get it right by the end, I promise.
The famous actor from Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Well, at least I'm thinking.
That would be very impressive, Jeff. Instead, you are stuck with us.
Now, Kim and Penn, obviously the web videos just blew up, and Penn, I guess I'll ask you first. How was the original intention of the videos, and how blown away were you by the reception?
Because I was leaving the news business to go into a production company. We decided to do a moving Christmas card, basically, because our kids wouldn't sit still for a picture. Kim had the idea of doing a parody song. I had written some parodies, so I wrote a parody. We put on pajamas and danced around Raleigh in front of all these different places. We thought it was going to be viewed by a couple of hundred. It got viewed by about 20 million. We made so many mistakes. We had our license plate and our address and the street we lived on in the video because we didn't know what was going to happen. And so that's how the ride was off, but we were totally unprepared.
And Kim, for you, did you, was the book idea, who brought that up? I'll ask you.
I'll start with why the topic of it. So it actually came out of the marriage counseling we did. And we would get these comments on our videos, like, you guys are like hashtag couple goals, whatever. And we kind of turned to each other. We're like, us? These people think we have the perfect marriage? And we felt like we had learned so much through counseling that we had put to work. It changed our marriage. It made us better people. It made us better parents. And it was these really simple tips and tricks that couldn't fit into a 3-minute video with jazz hands. And so we felt the way to really have these conversations was a book. And so that's when we started it. We pitched it to an agent, and the whole process got started.
Penn, I guess I'll ask you, who was the had the most writer's block of the two of you? Who was it more challenging for?
We took turns with that. And honestly, the writer's block sometimes just had to do with all the other things that were going on in our life, like the ability to still and actually think about what we were writing. We'd gone through this counseling. We'd already done the work, and really all we were doing was telling stories that, they're in our brains. We can remember them. It wasn't like we were inventing something new. But the writer's block actually kind of went away in March when we were finishing the book, when there was literally nothing going on.
Of course, right? Now, Kim, Everybody Fights, Why Not Get Better at It? This is more about working through those issues in our lives. And for you to be able to share, and like you mentioned before, you're kind of surprised by folks wanting to hear what you guys have learned. But for you to be able to touch lives and make differences, I mean, what's that mean to you guys?
I think especially when it comes to this book, I mean, listen, we've created something like 1,000 of these silly, goofy videos. But this book in particular, to me, is the most important thing we've ever shared. And already, I mean, we put it out March 30th, and already there are people who are reading it as a couple, who have finished it as a couple, and they say immediately, I used this language, and it changed the tone of the conversation we've been having for the last 5 years, or a fight we've been having for the last 10 years. And we're working through it now. And like, I had tears in my eyes reading that, because if it's only one couple that this helps, like, my job is done. But I'm really hoping it has a bigger impact for couples everywhere.
And Penn, for you, has this last 12 months since everything shut down, has the inspiration for your viral work, has that picked up, or has it been a little bit harder to find the inspirations?
The last 12 months have been very easy to find inspiration. The way that we write music and skits is by looking at what's going on in the world and in our families and making it rhyme. That's like the simplest way to discuss it. And there was so much, there was nothing going on, but there was a lot going on. You know what I mean? Everything was different. Everything had changed, and we were looking at the world through this new lens, and that's a good starting point for creativity, is a new lens and a new way to look at things. So also, good writing comes from pain, and I experienced a lot of pain as an extrovert over the last. I was very deeply sad by the fact that I could not get my energy from elsewhere. I love my wife and I love my family, but there's a lot of people who have this type of brain where you need new experiences. So I was very sad in a lot of times in the last year, and that, I think that drove some of it as well.
And Kim, what do you think that you and Penn learned over this last 12 months being stuck with each other as much as you were, that you can share and helps you guys moving forward once things open back up?
I think we learned how much we like each other. Not to sound like we love each other. And we had a good marriage. And before we went to counseling, it became a great marriage. But I have to say, as much as Penn is a super duper extrovert and wants to get out, and as much as I wanted my time alone, I think we learned, like, I don't know, I think that we've learned that we really liked each other. And I do feel for couples that have been under the stress. We're all under the stress. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't sunshine and roses. But at the end of the day, I think it really helped that we like each other.
That does make a huge difference, that's for sure. And again, the new book, Everybody Fights, so why not get better at it? Kim and Penn Holderness, I got to say, I truly appreciate you guys for taking some time out this morning. Hope you guys have a great weekend, continued success, and hopefully we can catch up again real soon.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks. We'd love that.
Now, you know how companies spend a fortune buying the naming rights to stadiums? Well, this is how much they'll pay up to buy a much less prominent spot. Little Caesars just came up with a pretty good promotion. They want to buy the naming rights to your living room. Now, if you sign a not really legally binding contract saying you'll call it Little Caesars NHL Viewing Room through the end of the NHL season in May, you'll get free Crazy Bread every Wednesday. Like I mentioned to her before we came on the air, getting me some cool dad points I can use all I can do. Actress and voice actress as well. We'll talk about that. Paget Brewster. Good to visit with you this morning, Paget. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me, Cameron.
Now, Paget, when did voice acting come into it to play for you?
Actually, I think the first animated series I did was Godzilla for Fox, and that was in 1997 or 98. So I was lucky that I got in early, because it's a hard business to break into. But I was relentless. I just kept auditioning and kept trying. And especially now during the pandemic, it's a great job to have, because I can do it in a bathrobe in a little padded room.
And Paget, is it harder or easier to bring the emotion out vocally than doing the live action stuff for you?
Well, the live action stuff, you are paying attention to your face and the light, and what does my hair look like, and did I hit the mark, and faking a camera angle. You know, sometimes you're in a scene on camera and you're supposed to be having a conversation with someone, but you're looking 45 degrees away from that person, because that's what translates for the camera. For voice acting, everything is in the voice. And the person I've seen who is the most mesmerizing, brilliant voice actor is Mark Hamill. Wow. I was able to record a couple of animated shows with him, and that guy is amazing. Amazing.
Now, we talked about the start of voice acting for you, but a new series that premieres this Sunday late night on the Adult Swim series, Birdgirl. And Paget, tell us how this came about for you.
Well, Birdgirl is a spin-off from a show that was on Adult Swim for about 7 years called Harvey Birdman. And Birdgirl is like, it's a spin-off in the same way that Star Trek Next Generation is, or Fear the Walking Dead. The only character from Harvey Birdman that is on Birdgirl is Birdgirl. But we have a bunch of new, exciting characters. It's the same writers, the same producers, the same artwork, the same absurdity, the same slightly... not dirty. What is it? Envelope pushing. It's. Oh wait! Someone's trying to help me, and I can't understand. It's irreverent and interesting and exciting and very, very funny. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm really proud of all the new characters that we have in it as well.
And Paget, do you find the voice acting and kind of changing up the character that you're put in a role for, does that maybe allow you to just feel a little bit more free, if you will, with the role?
Oh, yeah. But I do. Listen, here's my talent as Birdgirl. I can speak very quickly, very articulately, because my father was an English teacher the whole time I was growing up. And I'm really good at rage, screaming, kicking. Like you have to do a lot of fighting in animation. And you have to be able to, run in place and throw a lot of punches. And that it all has to be verbal. You're not seeing it on a screen until the animators get to you. So there is a lot of freedom in it, but it really depends on who your writers are, if they're willing to let you try things that they didn't think of. And these guys are those guys. Eric Richter and Michael Ouline, who produced the show, and Krista Miller are fantastic. And
Birdgirl's got her hands full with her crew of misfits as well.
Yeah, she takes over her dead father's company, and the company's kind of a rotten company. Mm. They produce products that are not necessarily morally correct or even functioning properly, and she gathers together some of her employees to make them her, kind of ragtag superhero posse, but none of them have any superpowers. One of them is a good masseuse. The publicist is an extremely strong woman, but like physically, like bam, punch, as well as mentally. And there's one mind reader. There is a mind reader, and she's green. So it's an interesting group.
Now, for you, is it hard on voice acting as far as, is there any camaraderie whatsoever? Especially, I mean, obviously this last year there's not, but on other opportunities that you've had in the past?
No, because things really changed. Unfortunately, not a lot of animated shows record together. Like when we did Godzilla, we were all in the same room. There would be 15, 16 people in one big room with music stands and scripts, and everyone had their own microphone, and the director would call out, okay, let's do scene one, and boom, you would read all the way through and then pick up lines. The way things have been working for the past, I would say the past 9 or 10 years, people record separately. And I think partially that's to keep the sound really clear. So that people aren't talking over each other, but occasionally you record with someone. I recorded with Mark Hamill, like I told you, on a show called Dan Versus. BoJack Horseman, you get to do a table read with everybody. But unfortunately, no, there aren't a lot of group records anymore. So I haven't even met most of the people in Birdgirl because we all recorded separately.
Now, Paget, what have you really taken to heart this last year and the time that we've had separately that maybe you're going to take and put into action as we move forward, as things open up a bit?
I'm really hoping that this last year we have all learned more what is important, genuinely important on a day-to-day basis. What can we learn about each other and how to make our world a better place? Hopefully I'm a better cook. I know I can peel potatoes and vacuum like a genius now. I'm a great floor mopper. But I miss my friends and I miss my family, and I appreciate them more. I appreciate local restaurants. I appreciate how hard people work in hospitals and the front lines of firefighters and cops. And I think we will all come out of this hopefully appreciating each other more and not feeling so separated by social media or politics. Or I just hope we can learn from each other and miss each other and appreciate each other when we come out of this.
That's good stuff. And again, the new series Birdgirl is going to premiere on Adult Swim Sunday night, April 4th, midnight Eastern, 11 local time. And Paget, I always want to make sure and let our listeners know where they can keep up with everything you got going social media wise as well.
They can find me on Twitter at Paget. They can find me on Instagram at Paget
Had to change it up a little.
Well, somebody, some of my fans had my name. Everyone had my name in any configuration, Criminal Minds fans, but I love them, so they can have it.
There you go. Well, Paget, it has been great to visit with you this morning. Looking forward to the new series and hopefully catching up again real soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Babes at 313 Falcon Road for sponsoring today's podcast. Be sure and check out their Red Basket specials. They've got a great selection of new hardware, plus the largest selection of disposables in Southwest Oklahoma. Stop in and see them 313 Falcon Road. Call or text 580-471-VAPE. Thanks again to Shelley. Now we're a year into this pandemic, and having to cough or sneeze in public is a little more stressful now. Now, according to a new survey, 56% of us feel like we're judged when we sneeze or cough in public due to the pandemic. And that's especially bad with allergy season upon us. Now, here are the top things we think when we have to sneeze or cough in public during COVID. Number 1, great, now people think I'm sick. Number 2, oh no, I hope they don't think I'm sick. Number 3, I promise I'm not sick. Number 4, hold it in. Number 5, I hope I don't have any snot in my mask. Number 6, it's just allergies, I swear. And number 7, where's my hand sanitizer? Now, the survey also found that 55% of people feel some amount of panic when the urge to sneeze comes on in public. And 46% of us are absolutely dreading allergy season this year because of the pandemic. We've got Elle Marr on with us today. And Elle, first off, I appreciate you taking some time to be on.
My pleasure, Cameron. Thank you for having me.
And I don't know why. I guess every time I go over to my recording software, it decides that you don't need to see what I'm doing. That's what it is.
Don't look behind the curtain.
Yeah, I know, right?
I did it.
Well, Elle, after the success of your first book, which is over your right shoulder, your right, my left, after that success, what kind of pressure do you put on yourself as a writer on the next story you're going to unload on, if you will?
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind. The Missing Sister took me by surprise. I was hopeful that people would read it, and they did. I was very pleased and grateful for that. I'm very also pleased to say that all of the pressure for my second book, Lies We Bury, also happen to have nearby me here.
It's up on my bookshelf.
Oh yeah, and on your shelf. Look at that. Place of honor, top shelf. Thank you. I was the only one that placed pressure on myself for Lies We Bury. I was very, my publisher was super supportive, just kind of let me loose and run wild. And we, of course, discussed the idea beforehand, but I just kind of wrote it and saw where the story took me.
Now, when you start a project, do you start from scratch, or is it ideas that you've maybe put down in journaling or notebooking before, or do you just like to start all fresh?
I wish I was one of those writers where I would just find an idea and it would turn into a novel. But I'm more of a collector. I think of ideas over time and then I write them down. And when it comes time to write a book, I review that list and see what stands out to me at that time or what I think I want to sit with for 6 months. You know, it's a commitment to write a novel and really invest all that time and energy into it. So I have to see what grabs me.
Now, the darkness behind some of the writing, I mean, is darkness in your everyday life, or is this maybe your escape?
I think there's darkness in everyone's life. I don't know if I can say that. I think there are shadows and echoes of it in anyone's life. There's a commonly quoted phrase, I guess. Everyone has a silent struggle or an unknown struggle. And I believe that. And each of those struggles are valid. So I like to explore that in my books as well. I definitely explore some darker turns and twists, but I hope that the reader sees there's an optimistic through line in each of my books.
Now, where did the writing come for you? I mean, were you the reader growing up? Was that always an interest to you?
I was always a reader. I was a huge reader, a voracious reader. I would be the kid in the back seat driving home at night with their parents, holding up the book so that the headlights of the car behind us would illuminate the page. I frequently read after bedtime under the covers in the dark. So I just always loved reading, and then one day decided to try my hand at it myself, I think around the ripe old age of 8. So it's been a long time in the making.
So you held yourself back as long as you could.
Exactly.
Now, where do you find the inspiration for the heroines that you have in each of your books?
That's a great question. They are my heroines. They are my protagonists, but they're not your cookie cutter heroines. I take great pride in creating really complex, multidimensional characters that are typically, my main characters are typically female so far. But that means that they're moody, they're taciturn, they have bad days, they snap sometimes under this incredible pressure that I place on them. So they're not always great, I guess, people. And I think that's in line with all of us. I think sometimes we have bad days, and especially if we're under a lot of stress, we might react poorly or less than we would otherwise, with less awareness than otherwise. So my inspiration is really real life, myself and friends and family and people that I hold dear and that I love in spite of those bad days, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, did this last 12 months lend itself to better writing opportunities for you, or did the excess time lend to more binging for you?
The answer is no, but not for the reason you might think. I actually had my first child. I gave birth to my first child last year in January of 2020. So things have been my writing has changed significantly due to the pandemic, but then also because I have now a toddler running around. So it's now I write whenever I can, whether that's in the mornings or the afternoon during nap time or in the evening, usually after he goes to bed. So it's the pandemic itself offered more time, but my personal development, they led to less time. So I think more time for binging, though, definitely. Netflix was definitely there for me.
Now, what was your favorite binge of 2020?
Oh, I mean, there was so much stuff going on in 2020, right? Like there was so much heavy stuff. And I also write darker stuff with some optimistic through lines, but it's some heavier stuff sometimes if I'm writing certain chapters. So I think my favorite binge was the Netflix show, The Circle, which is a reality show really based in social media. And I loved it because it was such kind of basic entertainment. Like you didn't have to think a lot going into it. You just turned it on, you absorbed the different people that were placed in front of you. And then The Circle came out with a French version, which was right up my alley. The Missing Sister is set in Paris, France. And then they came out with the Brazil version. It was wonderful. French,
I heard that you like to watch French movies with the subtitles off. Is that right?
I do. I speak French fluently, but it's not as tight as it once was. I spent 3 years living in French Normandy. And so it's been a long time since then. And I must watch French movies with the subtitles off in order to keep up with it as best I can. So I miss some of it still. Like the slang is definitely slipping.
Now, how does release day look different this time around for you? I mean, I can't even imagine what it looked like before on the book release days. What's it look like in 2021 for you?
I wish I could tell you it looked different, but for me, I debuted last year on April 1st, 2020 as well. I had the same pub date for both books, oddly enough. And so I had big plans. I had like in-person parties. I had in-person bookstore signings. basically everything you dream of when you're an aspiring author. And the pandemic changed that. So I did all my events virtually here at home, and I'm doing them all virtually here at home this year, today as well, for Lies We Bury's release. But it's, I will say it's wonderful in a way, and that I can connect with people across the country, such as yourself. I'm in Oregon, and it's been really great. I know before everything went virtual, pre-2020, there were not nearly as many virtual events like this. So it's pretty amazing to connect with people cross country.
Now, what's been the biggest tech issue that you had to learn or the biggest technological advance you had to make as a result of the pandemic?
That's a great question. I'm still striving towards that advance. I haven't quite gotten there. Certainly mastering Zoom has just been wonderful. And then other platforms like, Teams or Crowdcast. I'm still struggling to master my AirPods, as I shared with you earlier. Hopefully I'll get it before I get vaccinated. Hopefully I'll actually master the AirPods after a year of attempting it.
We'll pull for you.
Thank you.
Now, give us kind of a little insight into the new book and where that heroine came from for you.
Yes. Lies We Bury is inspired by, sadly, true crime. I begin Lies We Bury following my heroine, Marissa Moe, who escaped from the basement prison in which she was born. And two decades later, late 20-something, she's now trying to move past that trauma and that stigma of being born in captivity. She's working as a photographer in Portland and begins covering crime scenes when someone starts leaving her messages and also items from her childhood at these crime scenes. So as she is goaded into going to these crime scenes and more signs point to her potentially as the murderer, Marissa must dig into these long buried memories in order to determine who is the killer and trying to frame her for this. I took inspiration from, some of the most heinous true crimes out there, false imprisonment and, acts of captivity. And I did that because, as I shared with you earlier, I keep a list of things that remain in my mind for, longer than 30 seconds. We move on from one thing to the next shiny thing so quickly nowadays. And items that stay with me or headlines that stay with me, I write down and then I think about later and explore, could that be a good novel? So I definitely took inspiration from true crime headlines. But there are elements of true crime headlines in Lies We Bury, but it's completely fictitious. Nothing is based on a specific crime.
Now, as you now have 2 books under your belt out there and available, how is your writing or maybe your outlook different going toward the next one?
That's a great question. I wrote The Missing Sister for myself very leisurely over the course of about 3 years before I landed my literary agent. And then we sold it to my publisher a couple months after that. Lies We Bury, I wrote in about 6 months, and then edited after that with my publisher. This next book, Strangers We Know, which is coming out in May 2022, follows along the same timeline in that it's a solid timeline. There's a deadline now. So it's no longer meandering here or the subplot there or something that caught my eye, another, shiny subplot. I have to be very strict with myself. So I've learned how to be better at time management, definitely.
Now, what is your best break of writer's block? What do you use to break writer's block? Walking.
It sounds so simple, but I go on a walk. I go outside, which is also really helpful just during the pandemic. But I specifically will go on a walk if I have writer's block. Something about the physical act of moving while I'm totally in my head about something will usually unlock some aspect of that issue.
Now, how hard, I guess I could ask your husband about that, but how hard are you to deal with whenever you get closer to deadlines?
I'm pretty crabby. It's one of those things. There's another quote out there that's like, writers are insufferable. If they're writing, they're insufferable. If they're not writing, they're insufferable. And I'm definitely one of those writers that when I get close to deadline, I'm just fully in my characters' heads and trying to transpose that onto paper as quickly as possible. But once I get there, I think I'm a lovely person to be around. Again, you probably have to ask my husband.
Yeah, right. Once the writing's over for that next hour or two, we're good, right?
That hour break, yeah, just lovely.
Now, as you go toward the weekend and moving through 2021, how has the goal setting for you changed?
I'm now thinking definitely longer term, which is not necessarily very long term, probably like 6 months out. I'm thinking about my next book. I'm thinking about, how I want my career to be shaped if any of us get to say in that. So it's caused me to, not come up with a 5-year plan, but definitely a year projection of what I hope to do on a daily basis, which is right.
There you go. And again, the new book available now, Lies We Bury by Elle Marr. Elle, I want to make sure, let folks know not only where to find the book, the social media, and also your projects as well.
Yes, thank you. You can find at ellemarr.com, ELLEMARR.com, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And my book Lies We Bury is out today, and I'm excited to join that journey.
And apparently the video just does not want to, it doesn't appreciate my face today. It's not the only one, right?
It's a good looking face. It was just giving me all of the attention during my pitch for my website at ellemarr.com.
That's what it was. Well, Elle, it has been great to visit with you today. I appreciate you taking some time, especially on book release day. That's amazing. Hope you have continued success and we can catch up.
It's my pleasure, Cameron. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, last year, most companies broke their tradition of putting out some sort of mildly amusing April Fool's Day joke because of the pandemic. This year, well, the jokes were back. A few companies still held out. Google announced that it was skipping a prank because, the pandemic is still going. T-Mobile also skipped doing a prank and used yesterday as a day to raise money for charity instead. Now here are some of the jokes that other companies did, however. Number 1, Velveeta. They made an ad for a fake line of skincare products made out of liquid cheese. Outback Steakhouse made fake lipsticks that are the colors of the different cooking temperatures for steaks. Lego. They made an ad for smart bricks that move out of your way as you walk so you won't step on them, which probably the best one in my idea. Bud Light Seltzer, they announced a pizza flavor. Green Giant and Peeps, they teamed up to announce cauliflower-flavored Peeps. Duolingo created a toilet paper that also teaches you a foreign language. And Jif made exfoliating face masks made from peanut butter. Honored to have our next guest on the podcast, Heisman Trophy winner, former NBA player, Charlie Ward, also a podcaster, coach, so many other things behind the name. And first off, Charlie, appreciate you taking some time to be on the show.
I appreciate you having me on. Look forward to speaking with you.
Charlie, obviously, we're into April, but that's when March Madness actually winds down for everybody. And how excited are you, or is the Final Four feel different excitement-wise for you this year?
Well, I get a chance. I'm a sports junkie, so getting a chance to watch basketball, Final Four, I'm glad it happened because last year it didn't. So we're just happy to be able to see the teams, the men and women's teams that are still alive for the national championship. And there should be some very good basketball.
And we mentioned the podcast. And Charlie, how did you delve into the world of podcasting post professional sports athlete?
Well, I mean, it kind of just happened in some form of fashion. It started over the quarantine when I started interviewing friends of mine. We started having conversations on IG Live, and then it snowballed from there to co-hosting a podcast with Lloyd Spence Jr. and Kendrick Haskins now, and so we're BLEAV in ACC. So so that's kind of how it all came about, and now we're talking about ACC and other things associated with the ACC in some form or fashion. But just great commentary, be able to share your thoughts. Like I said, I watch a lot of games, sports, and so just trying to shed light and, help bring awareness to the issues and some insight as well.
And I know you mentioned bring some light as well. And I know that in your personal life as well, that's a huge part, is an influence on others, and especially coaching and the next generation. And Charlie, how important is everything that you do coming together to touch others and make a difference in their lives?
Well, someone did it for me, and I was able to, reach great heights. And so God has definitely given me this obligation to be able to share and give back to the next generation or whomever may listen, to be able to share my story and to help encourage or inspire someone to continue to, live in the moment. That's a lot of times we look into the future and try to figure out what the future looks like, and we miss out what the moment is. And we know that our moments that we live in each and every day determines our future. And so we just have to enjoy all the aspects of life, whether it's positive or negative, and learn from each one and grow as a person. And so that is something that I feel God has blessed me with, a lot of different experiences to be able to share with others.
And this weekend being March Madness, like we mentioned, being as different as it is, who do you still think that it's down to Baylor, Gonzaga? Do you think there's a surprise in the works?
I keep saying Houston as a surprise. I know everyone wants to see Gonzaga and Baylor since they missed the game this year. I would like to see. Everyone wants to see that game, but I just think Houston is a team that you can't count out. They play a style of basketball that some people may or may not like, but they play defense, and on offense they're going to shoot it. They do make shots, but they're also going to crash the glass. That's what they do best. And so it'll be interesting to see how they're able to combat Baylor and their guard play, which they have stellar guard play. And Houston is a team that's scary because they compete. I think all the teams compete, but they find a way to just get after you and play with great intensity. And like I said, all the teams do that, but they just seem to do it at a higher level all the time.
Now, Charlie, as you look at the game today as opposed to when you were playing at Florida State, how much has the college game emulated what the NBA might have been back then? There's still teams that are very similar. A lot of teams now are running sets. I know that's what we did in college. And we played defense, different pressures. Maybe the difference, the athletes have grown a little bit. Not everyone, but most teams are looking for length and to fit their system. And then you have, your small guards who can control, like my man at UCLA. He's controlling the game. And so I just think that's, there are different ways to do it, and you just have to find your way to get it done. But I think times have changed, even from football to now. Times have changed, and that's great. You don't want to stay in work for sure. You talked about football as well, and how much different was it to take in the NFL and the college season this last year for you as a fan because of all of the extra precautions that have to be put in place?
Yes, I'm a basketball coach and high school coach, and we'd have to go through all the different testing and those types of things. And I only heard from, the coaches and players that had to go through that, and it was really, really tough on them. And so just to get to the field each and every week to the court, it was very, very taxing. And so a lot of teams just, some tapped out, really tapped out, meaning they didn't finish the season. And some, kids were like, man, this is just too much. And I just don't want to go through this all the time just to play. And then some, just finish. The ones that were a part of the championship run, they just finished the season. So it was taxing mentally. And it's a mental grind, having to go and get swabbed every 3 days or 3 times a week, whatever it was. That is just grinding within itself. And then you had to go and prepare for a game. And so just to get to the floor, to the field, was great. And to be able to see, the ending of each season after that grind, is just great. And so hopefully we can finish off finish off this year of football and basketball. Of course, Alabama won a championship, and we'll see who wins the championship between in the Final Fours for the men and women. But whoever it is, they definitely earned it because it's been a tough year.
And Charlie, as a coach and a mentor, what are maybe some of the things that you've learned over the last year that you can take into your coaching and just holding your playbook, if you will, moving forward?
It's one is listening to the players more and understanding their situations, because a lot of times we get so caught up in the grind of trying to win and what it takes to win. Sometimes we bypass what kids may be going through. So this definitely was a year where we had to pay closer attention to the kids in all aspects because we didn't know what they may have been going through, whether it was an illness, whether it was something at home. Sometimes, as I mentioned, those things we did pay attention to, but it was heightened with the COVID situations, and just being adjusting to schedules changing, doing your part when it came to making sure that you were doing everything you could to stay safe during the pandemic. Zoom calls definitely has changed, communication. And, if everyone can't make it to a certain spot, you can, have a Zoom call, Zoom meeting to be able to at least communicate those types of things. So, those are things that you can, fall back upon now that potentially wasn't really something you thought about, 2 years ago.
Now, you talked about Instagram and along with social media, have you had to join the TikTok generation yet?
No, I haven't gone that far. My kids, my wife, they keep talking about doing something, but I haven't gone to the TikTok and all that just yet.
Now, Charlie, you mentioned also about the mental health of the players. How much has the emphasis and people paying attention to the mental health of the athlete changed over the last few years?
It's not just the athletes; it's people in general. I think a lot of things have, and sometimes it's all started by recognition of a celebrity of some sort, someone in high regards, or someone going off. That's normally, people start looking into the mental health aspect of it. And so I think it's been going on for quite some time. But now we're starting to have more of these issues, and just trying to figure out, what's the trigger? Is it chemical imbalance? Is it something that happened actually in a person's life? And so these are all challenges we all have to face. But the key is to make sure that you're talking things out. You're not holding things in, because we all can be a ticking time bomb if we're holding things in and not getting our feelings heard or sharing our feelings with others. And then we can definitely explode. So it's key to be able to communicate your feelings with people that you feel comfortable with, whether it's a therapist or whomever it may be, and then you can get the necessary help.
That's right. Well, Charlie, I want to make sure and let folks know again the BLEAV in the ACC podcast. Charlie, want to let folks know where to pick that up, and also where to keep up with all your social media as well. Well,
BLEAV ACC is on the BLEAV Network, or Noise Maker page, which is NOIZ. You can find that on YouTube, and at Charlie Ward Official, and the real Charlie Ward on one of those social media handlers. Yeah, I think it's Instagram and Facebook. Well, Charlie, I truly appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule today to be on, and hope you have a great weekend, a great Easter, and enjoy the finality of March Madness as well coming up Monday night. All right. I appreciate you having me on, and you have a great Resurrection Day as well. Thanks again to Shelly and our friends at Smiley's Breezy Vapes, 313 Falcon Road here in Altus. Check them out online at facebook.com/Smiley's Breezy Vapes. They've got new hardware, plus if you have any questions, they have the knowledge, the know-how, and plus they're willing to help. Stop in and see them, 313 Falcon Road, or give them a call, 471-VAPE. Our next guest on the podcast today is one of, Billboard's top 100 power players. I'm sure this not how he introduces himself, but we've got Jason Peterson with us today. And Jason, we're going to delve into several things, and including re-monetizing music industry. And first off, Jason, thanks for your time, man.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Now, Jason, give us a little insight into your background of music, of marketing, and especially the remonetizing, like we mentioned, especially the way the industry has been this last 12 months.
Absolutely. So I always describe myself as a recovering attorney, serial entrepreneur by vocation. I founded a company named Go Digital 15, almost 16 years ago. We work across the music and television industries today. And we're very, very excited about what's happening in the music industry. The industry hit its apex in the 2001-2002 timeframe with CD sales, and then went through a long period of decline. And we affectionately refer to it in the industry as the era of Napster. And however, it's been back. It hit nadir in 2015, and we've been growing like crazy since, thanks to streaming. And a lot of really, really interesting things happening now.
And what do you attribute that growth back? Is it a result of the marketing efforts that were put in place?
It's really a result of the business model, right? If you think about what happened with the proliferation of the internet and the proliferation of file sharing applications like Napster, is that as an industry, we had to compete with free. And if you consider the value proposition of your typical music streaming service, some of which are free, YouTube, for example, is mostly free service. Of course, they have a premium service. And somewhere between free and $10 US a month if you live in a developed country. And less if you live in an emerging market. And what you get for $10 equivalent a month is basically the history of the world's music at your fingertips on any device on demand in high quality. And so there's an analogy, a mathematical analogy here that I know consumers aren't thinking about, but I think it draws the point. If you make, let's say, $20 an hour and you spend any more than 3 minutes on a file sharing application or a stream ripping site looking for a high quality copy of what you want on the device you want, you were better off, honestly, just to buy the track, or in a paid streaming environment where it's just a subscription. That number goes way down. It's way less than 3 minutes. It's probably measured in seconds. And so streaming competes very, very effectively with free. It's like the bottled water analogy. When you go to Disneyland, why do you spend money on a bottled water? Water is generally free. Well, it's quality assured and you want it now, right? The convenience factor has value.
This last year, Jason, how do you think that the industry itself has maybe reformulated plans, changed up that business model for years to come? Because obviously we've learned some new ways to do things as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting things happening. You see a ton of platforms using music, even being built around music. I mean, look what's been happening with TikTok, right, for the last couple of years. And then you have, enormous platforms like the Facebook group of companies and platforms that historically have not generated income for the music industry. They're now generating income for the music industry. Pretty much everybody's come to the table and said, I understand music has value. I understand that we need to be involved in the creation and dissemination of that value to creators. And it's created a new golden era for the music industry.
Now, Jason, for artists, do you think that with all of the availability to get your music out there, do you think that it's muddied the waters and maybe made it a little harder to find that diamond in the rough a bit?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. There's 60,000 releases a day coming out now. That's an unfathomable amount. If you consider 20 years ago, right, with a record store like a Tower Records or a Warehouse, both of which are defunct now, except Tower in Japan, right. They could maybe carry 45,000 releases total in a large store. And we have 60,000 releases a day coming out. So you are absolutely right, absolutely correct that the white noise is at an all-time high. And so the question is, how do you cut through the clutter? And that's where personalization and discovery becomes the most important issue of the day, right? How do we build technologies as an industry to allow people to have a personalized experience where they can discover content that resonates with them? And you see companies in the video space like Netflix doing this very, very well. You see programmatic playlists on Spotify doing this very, very well. I mean, the fact that you can go to a song and create a radio station from just a single sound recording, and that radio station is pretty much on point with the feel of that sound recording, is a really amazing technical innovation.
And Jason, where does it seems that the bar is so high already with technology and innovation. I mean, how much farther is the bar going to go up in the coming years?
That's a great question. We've seen a move recently to adding high fidelity audio, right? There is a smaller, not majority, but a smaller segment of the market that missed the fidelity of compact discs or vinyl. And so now you see Amazon and Tidal and the other platforms offering high fidelity audio. Sony has a 360 audio product coming down the pipe that starts with a 360 degree mastering process where you can literally arrange essentially in a graphical user interface, arrange where the instruments are and the players of those instruments are relative to the listener. So you can put yourself in the middle of the band, and they then virtualize that for headsets or for surround sound setups. So I think we'll see some high-end audio products going that way. But in general, I think most of the innovation is going to be around what you alluded to, which is in the area of discovery and personalization. And it's going to involve video, right? Young people watch their music. I travel the world quite often for work, and anytime I'm in another area, whether it's Puerto Rico, whether it's Bogota, whether it's Cairo, I will walk into a restaurant or just on the street, and I'll ask the kids who are listening to music what they're listening to, and more often than not, they're watching their music. They've got YouTube running or some other service, and so video has become very, very important with young people.
And you talk about traveling the world and seeing people that are touched by music. How much different is the intake based on where you're at?
Are you talking about the consumer's intake of music and what they're listening to?
How they're listening to it.
Yeah, honestly, it's not that different. I have a very specific memory. I was in Cairo in Egypt, and I ran across a kid, maybe 12, 14 years old, listening to music in his pocket on his smartphone. And by the way, cheap, ubiquitously available Android smartphones has changed the game for the industry, right? Mm-hmm. You have more than 5 billion people worldwide now who have a smartphone in their pocket, and more than 68% of the world is covered by 4G LTE or faster wireless internet. So that's changed the game for us. And this kid who he worked with tourists and with sort of camel tours that they would do. He didn't speak English, and I didn't speak his language. But when I pointed to it, he looked at me and he goes, "Google Play." I was like, all right, okay, I can get behind that. When you go into the Asian markets, they have some different players there, right? Kakao in South Korea, Line is a big player in Japan. These are like social media companies essentially, but music is a part of what they do. You've got some very entrenched players in India, Geo7 and other premium music streaming platforms. So certain countries have their own ecosystem of platforms and players. China's kind of an island unto itself. But in general, you see the major players, most of which are U.S.-based, available everywhere, and you see people using them.
Now, we talked about the muddy waters. If there's a new artist that is out there trying to get their music in front of the right people, I mean, what do you do in these days? I mean, we started the podcast back in August, and I thought I knew a little bit about social media. I had to learn hashtags, and I'm still learning how to market the podcast, but I know the music's got to be just that much more difficult.
Yeah, it's a real challenge for people to cut through the clutter and form meaningful long-term relationships with consumers. I had this conversation recently with a very senior music executive at a major label, and he described it as the following. He said, look, we're kind of like a sports team, right? And we're always optimizing for our starting five. Who's our starting five that's going to be on the floor? And one of the major inputs that goes into making that decision of who's the starting five is, does the artist actively engage with their customer base? And a lot of that's largely through social these days, right? Mm-hmm. And so the music industry is more and more leaning on that direct-to-consumer relationship. Although I believe as an executive, it's also problematic because we don't really own the customer relationship. The platform does, right? Instagram, right. Twitter, TikTok, whoever, Tencent, they own the consumer relationship, really. But that is probably the single most important thing for artists is to build that direct-to-consumer connection that allows them to get the snowball rolling. It seemed like you were interested in how the industry is handling the deluge of 60,000 releases a day, and what does this mean for culture and artists and consumption.
The marketing aspect of things, I think, is one of the things that really interests me, and new up-and-coming artists that are always trying to find the best way to get their music out there. And do you think that it's genre-based as far as the difference in how technology's being consumed through technology?
Well, I think that's a compound question. There are consumer tastes that oscillate on a periodic basis, right? Historically, every 4 or 5 years, you'd see a shift from sort of more rhythmic music to more guitar-based music and back, right? And that kind of has always been a sine wave. So I think part of the answer to the question is consumer taste in the moment is obviously very relevant to what is popular. And then secondly, to the point you're making about talking to a lot of artists that are trying to figure out what is the best way to become popular. The number one piece of advice that I give any artist is, today we live in a collaboration culture. If you are not collaborating, you're making life difficult. If you look in the Latin music business, which is probably the best at this, or one of the best genres at this, you can see like the biggest streamer in the world, or top two, has historically in the last couple of years been a guy named Bad Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
About 4 or 5 years ago, Bad Bunny was bagging groceries in a San Juan supermarket.
Wow.
How did he become so popular so quickly? Well, one, he has a unique voice that people resonate with.
Right.
But even more than that, he was able to expose his unique voice because he fell in with a crew of artists in Puerto Rico who were already popular, guys like Daddy Yankee.
Right.
Guys like Ozuna, who have not been in the business that long, but did come before him. And these, and Ozuna himself had collaborated with artists that came before him. And so it's this culture of collaboration. You'll see if you go look at a reggaeton track, sometimes there's 3, 4, 5, 6 artists on a track. And you might not know one or two of them, but after you listen to the track, if you're a fan of that kind of music, you're going to know who that artist is. And you may click through on your Spotify or your Apple Music. You may check out a few of the other songs. You may add it to your playlist, which is kind of the equivalent of buying a CD, because you're going to go back to that playlist and listen to it over and over again. And this is how artists become popular. It is a collaboration culture. That is the number one thing artists can do for themselves to become more popular.
Now, Jason, we talked that you have interest in music and marketing, but where does the interest for you end? I mean, I know there's exercise health industry. What is it that incites you about new and upcoming adventures?
Well, for one, just, in terms of my life perspective and personality, I'm a curious person. I am interested in everything, and I want to learn almost anything. I believe anybody that I meet anywhere has something to teach me. And, I really, if I had to think of who do I aspire to be like, I would choose Richard Branson. This is a guy who I don't personally know. I hope to meet him someday, but, he has had hundreds of businesses over the course of his career. We did a thing called Go Digital University in our company, where we have a titan of industry come speak every week during the semester that we do this. And we had a guy recently, Phil Corderaro, who's run 3 of the 4 major record companies, and he helped Richard Branson start Birdgirl Records in America. And he told this story just the other day about how he asked Richard, you have over 100 companies. How do you manage this? And his answer was, I don't, which was essentially a very short way of saying he hires the right people, activates and enables them, gives them the resources they need, and gets the heck out of the way. And if any roadblocks come up, he'll remove them for those people. But otherwise, he relies on great people on his team to execute. And that's become very much my perspective as well. So, I'm interested in everything. I'm an entrepreneur by perspective. I love the media industry. Music is my absolute favorite because music excites the soul, right? It is the form of media that most closely excites our emotions. If you've ever tried to watch a movie or TV show without sound, it has no emotional impact.
Right.
It is music that creates emotion.
That's right. Well, Jason, if folks would like to find more information about the businesses you were discussing, also your social media and all of your exciting world travels, where can folks keep up with that?
Well, you can find me online. Our corporate website is godigitalmg.com. That's M as in media, G as in group.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram at USC Jason Peterson, and we'd love to hear from you.
All right. Well, Jason, I truly appreciate you taking the time to spend some time. Love visiting about music and talk a little marketing as well. Hope you have a great weekend, and we catch up again real soon.
Thanks for spending some time. Talk to you soon.
Again, thanks to our friends over at Smiley's Breezy Vapes at 313 Falcon Road for sponsoring today's podcast. Be sure and check out their Red Basket specials. They've got a great selection of new hardware, plus the largest selection of disposables in Southwest Oklahoma. Stop in and see them 313 Falcon Road. Call or text 580-471-VAPE. Our next guest on the podcast was referred by a friend of mine, actually my first friend in Nashville, Maria Ivy, was sent over a little info on him, and I checked out the music and I was like, We've got to get this guy on. Scott Shawn White is the name. And first off, Scott, great to visit with you. Looking forward to some good conversation, brother.
Thank you very much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Now, Scott, debut release coming up later this month. I mean, you've got 3 weeks. How many nights of sleep are you going to have between now and then?
Well, I don't know, maybe 5, 6. It comes out April 23rd, so we got a few days in there. And I'm old; I get pretty tired, so I will actually probably sleep. So
he said, "I may not sleep at night, but I'll catch a real quick cat nap." We're getting good at that, right?
Yeah, we are.
Now, Scott, tell us a little bit how this is going to be your debut release. And for you, how long have you been putting off the release? How long have you been working on the lyrics, the songwriting? I know you've been doing quite a bit of songwriting.
Yeah, I'm a staff songwriter in Nashville. We spend most of our days there trying to write songs for other folks, famous people like Tim McGraw and Blake Shelton, folks. But because that would actually make us some money, which would be just wonderful, it's weird. But along the way, I started writing in Nashville in 2005. And back then especially, I'm still learning, but back then especially, I started learning how to write a lyric and a country lyric, a Nashville lyric in 2005. And so the oldest songs in this record, there's 2 songs in this record from 2008 that I wrote in 2008. And then everything from there to 2019 songs ended up on this record. And I just kind of, when I made the list of possibles and the songs that ended up on the record, the criteria was, for me, songs that I was proud of as a songwriter that that said things that I wanted to put out into the world, and songs that made me feel something. So if they fell into those 3 criteria, they made the album.
And for you, who has had the biggest impact songwriting-wise? I know you talked about staff's co-writing. Who is maybe one of your biggest influencers as a songwriter?
It's a guy named Tony Lane. I know most people probably haven't heard that name, but you've only heard his songs. He wrote songs like I Need You for Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, Run for George Strait, and one of the best country songs ever, in my opinion, Letters from Home by John Michael Montgomery. Just a beast of a songwriter. And he has one album out that I don't know when he put it out, but I heard it in 2008. And it's self-titled, called Tony Lane. He's a Texas boy, but he's been a staff writer in Nashville for a few decades now. And it changed, that album literally changed the way I write songs. Like, it was a college course for me, and I just listened to it, and there were certain things that he did there that I heard, and I went, oh, that's how you do that. And I'd never had an album do that to me. Now I have other influences, on the songwriter side, it would be, people like Travis Meadows and Lori McKenna and Radney Foster and Walt Wilkins, folks, there's just so many, but he's the guy that changed the way I write. And like the title track of this album, Call It Even, I knew I had started it right after I listened to Tony Lane's record, but I went and looked when I had to send out the lyrics for people to do harmony on and send the lyrics to, Apple Music and stuff. The date of creation on that song was January of 2008. It was literally in the days after I listened to the Tony album.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Days after I listened to Tony Lane.
The personal touch of the stories that you sing about. I mean, being a staff songwriter, how much different is the songwriting that you do on staff as opposed to what you've done for yourself?
In a perfect world, they wouldn't be very different. But we do not live in a perfect world, and that's okay. Like, I respect those writers that say, hey, screw being commercial. I'm going to be, exactly me. I don't care how weird it is. I totally get that. I do. And I have those days where I'm like that. Matter of fact, most of this record is not remotely commercial. It's just songs that I'm proud of. But I'm also one of those people that I just love the craft, the process. Every song idea is like a puzzle to me, whether it's a commercial idea that hey, man, we have a shot at getting this cut by Dan and Shay or Blake Shelton or somebody. If it's commercial, it doesn't bother me because I just love the process. And like I said, putting that puzzle together, figuring out which pieces go where. And so it's not that much different. But I will say that my favorite songs in my job as a staff writer are the songs that hopefully are great and they can be a hit, because those two things do not always go together. There are hit songs out there. There are hit songs out there that I love, that are guilty pleasures for me. But craft-wise, they're not very good, to be honest with you. And then there are great songs that are not a hit at all. And so your hope is to have some that are both.
Now, Scott, for you, what is an example for you of one that when you put out, maybe it turned out better than you originally thought? Was there any that kind of stick out for you?
A song that kind of caught me off guard, although I've loved it from the day we finished it, is a song called Crazy But True. It's track number 2 on there. And really it came from, it was one of the later songs in the process of recording the album, because I kind of did this album one song at a time. And I did it over COVID, the COVID shutdown. That's what actually gave me time to record the record. Is all of a sudden I was stuck at the house for months. And I was like, I had time to make that record I was talking about making. But it was late in the process, and that was a song that I wasn't quite sure how I was going to produce it. On each song I would try to find, quote unquote, the magic, and I sent it to the guitar player who did all the electrics on the record, and he did some of the acoustics. I sent it to him probably about 8 songs into the record, and I said, hey, I'll pay you a little extra. Will you spend some time with this and see if you can just find some magic with it in Dadgad tuning, because I really like that tuning. And he sent me back that acoustic guitar track, and it lit me up. It made the hairs on my arm stand up, and I went, that's it. And so I was a little surprised by that. As much as I love the song, his guitar part really just brought it to life in a way that I can't play guitar like that. So that's the great thing about great musicians. They'll hear things and they're capable of playing things that we're not. And he really just made that song for me.
Now, for you, what is your favorite part of the process? Is it the songwriting? Is it the production? Is it the instrumentation? What is your favorite part?
It's definitely the songwriting, although the production and everything would be a close second. I love producing. I wrote and produced hip hop and R&B for almost 20 years before I went to Nashville. And I played in a 10-piece funk disco cover band with horns in it for almost 30 years. And I played keys in that band, and I've been an engineer at 3 different studios around Dallas, and so I've kind of had my fingers in all those pies. But the songwriting part, man, I cannot tell you how much I love it. Sometimes I've said at shows a few times that, God gave me this gift, gives us gifts, and he doesn't just do it to, obviously we're given those gifts to glorify him and stuff like that, but he also gives it to us just because he knows how happy that particular gift will make you or me. He gives it to us for the sheer joy of it. Like when you give your kid or your grandkid some, a PlayStation or something, which is foolishness compared to songwriting, but you know what I mean? Like, part of the reason he gives us this stuff is just because he knows how much we're going to love it and how high we're going to get off of it without any, substance helped.
Now, Scott, for you, is it better whenever you first hear a song released, played on the radio, played back to you after the master's complete, or is it better for you whenever you're able to, well, you probably don't use pen and paper anymore, but whenever you put the pen down and you're like, done, which is your favorite?
You know, speaking in the context of this album, I'd have to be bluntly honest and say that the high I get right after we finish the song and you know that there's something special in the song, there's no high like that. And I will contrast it to, I've said to several people, that when you finish your album, part of you never wants to hear those songs, those recordings ever again, because you've heard them about 1,000 times while you've been working on them. And you're like, okay, if I never hear any of this again, this will be fine with me. I want the whole world to hear it, but I don't want to ever hear them again. Which is odd, but it is nice. You know, every few weeks as I'm driving down the road, listening to music, I'll be like, yeah, I'll listen to my own album again. Let's go listen to it and see if I, still am proud of it. And I'll listen to it. I'll be like, that's okay. I like that. So it's right.
Now, as time passes and the songs that you've written in the past, whenever you go and revisit those, do they sometimes have a different meaning to you based upon the experiences you're going through at the time?
Yeah, they do. That's one of the funny things about songwriting. And as a matter of fact, there's a song on this album that is a case in point of that. When I wrote the song on there called Right Reasons, and it says in parentheses for Kaya. Kaya is my granddaughter. And her name wasn't originally on there. And matter of fact, I wasn't even thinking about her when I wrote the song. I was thinking about the things we want to be famous for in life. Like when I was growing up in my 20s, I wanted to be in a big funk disco, not disco, but a big funk band that was, selling out arenas and all that stuff. And really, most of that as a youngster was just wanting to be famous for the sake of being famous. And then you take it these days, and there's all sorts of people on TikTok and social media getting famous for just silly stuff, ridiculous stuff, And so I was kind of thinking about that when I wrote the song, and as I've gotten older, realizing that we should want to be famous for better reasons. Like you should want to be famous for being a great dad, and for being a great friend and a husband and all those things. Not to be cheesy, but that's really what matters. And so that's what I wrote the song about. And then one night in May, my whole family, last May, it was the first night Texas had opened restaurants, and it's a restaurant that I play at a lot that's also a live music venue. And so they did the social distancing thing, and my whole family came out and watched, and Kaya came out. And she sat on the front step of the stage and watched that whole song. And it was the first time she had seen her pawpaw play. Weird calling myself pawpaw. And but I realized as she sat there and listened to that whole song that if I had written that to anybody in particular, any person in particular, it would be her. It would be the grandkids. And so that title changed that night. It went from Right Reasons to Right Reasons in parentheses for Kaya. So
that's awesome.
That's a perfect example of how songs change over time.
Now, Scott, whenever you get feedback from other songwriters that you've looked up to and worked alongside of, like Jack Ingram, the Tom Douglases, the Tony Arradas, all of those talking about your songwriting, I mean, is that a bit humbling? Is it a little hard to take, I guess I should say? Man,
it's crazy. It's completely crazy. But it's, yeah, it's, I don't even know if I have words for that. It feels, wonderful, and, it is humbling. Also, I'm very aware that it's taken a lot of work. One of the funny things that I'm serious about when I say it to people, though, but I always giggle and they laugh at shows. And people come up at shows and they go, "Man, these songs are so great," and da-da-da-da-da. I go, I've been practicing. Like for 17 years in Nashville, I've been practicing, man. Like, in those rooms with all those songwriters all the time, you're just always learning something. And I've been blessed to write in a lot of rooms, most of the rooms I'm in with people that are better than me and further down the road than me. And that's how you learn, so.
Now, as 2020 came upon us, obviously everybody had to change things a bit. This is one of my favorite questions as of late, especially, is what technological thing did you have to pick up over the last 12 months?
Zoom would be at the top of the list, I guess, right? Although I didn't write a whole lot over Zoom, I didn't go to Nashville from the beginning of March until the beginning of July. And so, but I did write a little bit on Zoom. I live out in the sticks. I live in a little town called Poetry, Texas. And, it's about 45 minutes east of Dallas. And, here that we don't have internet. So we use our cell phone hotspot, which is not very, great either. So I would have to go into town, 20 minutes into town to my oldest daughter's house to Zoom write with people. But I was so busy working on the album, and it wasn't new technology that I got, but, technology enabled me to do this record because I would put the bones together here at the house, and then I would send the files to guitar players and other musicians in Nashville and in Austin and in Dallas and tell them, here's kind of what I'm looking for, and they record their parts and send their parts back. And then I'd put that stuff together and I'd get my vocal on there and then I'd send it to somebody in Austin or somewhere around Texas to put the harmony vocals on them. So even though it wasn't new technology, I used the heck out of the existing technology to make this record because you couldn't be in the room with, people in person. And so I'm very, very thankful for that. And the other thing that I had to get involved in, the last part to that answer is, regretfully, I've had to get on TikTok. Because apparently TikTok is a big deal in the music business now. And as if we didn't have enough in this business to keep track of on Facebook and Instagram, apparently TikTok is a necessary tool if you're trying to put out a record. So I recently gotten on there. So
that's awesome. Now, what if
for better or worse?
Yeah, if you could break down 2020 for you in one song, what song would represent 2020 for you?
Helter Skelter. I mean, what a 5-year-long year, and it's so crazy too, because it was such a challenge and then so many unexpected blessings at the same time. People getting to spend time with their families, involuntarily, but you got to spend time like 3 weeks into it, me being home. My wife and I have been together for 32 years. We've been married for 30 and a half at this point. At 3 weeks into the shutdown, like end of March, was by far the longest I had been at home consecutively since we've been together. Yeah, now that's a woman that will that is made for that life with a musician that's gone all the time. And but the good news is I was home for 4 straight months and she did not leave me.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, yeah, I think you're still married, so I think there's at least some good to it.
She really loves me. It's not just because I'm gone most of the time. She actually loves me. This is awesome.
That's funny. Earlier, that one of our earlier guests, the Holdernesses, that's one of the things I asked them what they learned over 2020, and she said we learned that not only do we love each other, but we actually like each other. And I said that to my wife at lunch today, and she goes, "Yeah, I think that's something we learned."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got a little chance to figure out too what's really important, which is kind of sad that we had to be forced to figure that out, but we do. We're pitiful sometimes. Bless our hearts.
I know, right? Now, again, the album, Call It Even, coming out the 23rd, 3 weeks from today. I want to make sure, Scott, and let our listeners know where to find out information. I know they can pre-save it. They can check out singles online, all of that stuff. Where's the best place to do all that?
My website has got all that stuff. The Facebook and Instagram has the links to all that. And my third single came out today too. It's called Humankind. It'll be the last single before the record, and the video for it will come out sometime early next week. And that'll be all over again, the website and the Instagram and Facebook, just Scott Sean White, SEAN is Sean. I think my mom had a crush on Sean Connery, I think, with that spelling. But yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Scott, it has been great to visit with you. You got me stuck on the Sean too. It's been great to visit with you today, man. I look forward to the full release as well, and hopefully we can catch up again real soon, friend.
Anytime, sir. Anytime we can chat, I will come running.
Well, thanks again for joining me for this 54th episode of Good Questions with Cameron Dole here in Season 2. If you ever have a comment, question, or anything else you'd like to know, you can either find me on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at GQ with Cam. You can also click over to the contact page and leave me a message. If you'd like to help out in the funding for this podcast, click over to the shop at gqwithcam.com/shop. And if you have a special guest idea, email me, gqwithcam@gmail.com. Again, thanks to Brandon Allen for coming up with our music. We're going to let him play us out. Hope you guys have a great weekend.